Hello and welcome to the Overwatch Pacific Championship, Week 8, Day number 2. I'm Dallas Easy Fight Today. Joining me here as per usual, Matt Smite Ross and Kevin Ebra Walker. And tonight, SunSister's home day, obviously playing 2 games back to back. First up is going to be them taking on their sister team, the 2 powerhouses from Japan, SunSister taking on DeToNator.GOLD. And I mean, it's at this point now where you just really hope that SunSister can pick up their first win.
Of course, if you're a DeToNator fan, you want them to pick up a win as well, so it's a big ask for both the Japanese teams. Probably would mean a lot more for SunSister to pick up a win because it would be their very first win of the tournament. And they're going to need a bit of a morale boost because straight after DeToNator, they'll be playing Flash Wolves.
And look, SunSister have already played Fireball in this round robin. It didn't go too well. 0-3, DeToNator have already played Fireball in this round robin. 0-3 again. So for both of these teams, the next team they can get a win off is each other.
And this was something we were talking about just before we went live here tonight, about how both of these teams, when they played Fireball yesterday, neither of them looked like they were stronger than the other. They both obviously got 0-3 there, and I felt like DeToNator would have a little bit of a better showing, than SunSister came up with. But the thing was, Fireball dealt with both of these teams very convincingly, and now we see DeToNator obviously stepping up to the plate first here.
I think DeToNator out of the 2 probably looked a little bit better, but I expected them against Fireball to look a whole lot better than SunSister. But all that aside, I think those matchups was just Fireball improving a lot more than the 2 Japanese teams. So it's really hard to say when you're comparing them up against each other.
And as far as comparing them up against each other goes, history would tell DeToNator are still in the lead. First round robin, 3-2 victory for DeToNator. Second round robin, 3-0. The results for DeToNator have only gotten better against SunSister.
So next up, we're coming up to a 3 and -2, right?
I mean, that's pretty. You are very harsh, Smite.
That's not harsh.
I cannot
It's
believe you went that far.
Extrapolation.
And of course, if you didn't realize yet, SunSister home day, so they're going to get the both home sides to start things off with, as well as their own special kind of intro here. But SunSister, look, you're right, haven't picked up anything yet. They haven't looked like they can even take down DeToNator at this stage because DeToNator have been improving as well. I mean, most teams have. Every team has to some degree, but it just seems like if you 3-0'd SunSister in your last meeting, that's kind of setting the stage for maybe another 3-0.
And I mean, obviously, with it being their home day, they need every advantage they can get their hands on at this point. But I feel, obviously, when it comes to them playing against DeToNator, this is obviously the first team that they need to be able to topple moving forward. Maybe if they get a little bit of momentum, they can take it to Fireball later on in these round robins here. But as you can see, our schedule for tonight, SunSister's second matchup taking on Flash Wolves. They're going to be having a very difficult one when it comes to this matchup here. Then Flash Wolves obviously playing Fireball straight after that. And to finish up the night there, we're going to have Fireball taking on AHQ Esports Club. So with Flash Wolves obviously having 2 games back-to-back, currently being equal on the standings there with AHQ, they're looking to obviously set themselves into first place.
So Flash Wolves have statistically 2 expected wins today, and then AHQ has only 1. So Flash Wolves will have more total games under their belt, which will technically put them ahead of AHQ, but of course AHQ will have the chance to catch up a little bit later when they have their extra game that we'll see on another day later on. But at the same time, it's going to be nice for Flash Wolves just to steal that top spot away from AHQ for a little while. Remember, this is meant to be their round robin where they go undefeated.
Exactly, and I've said previously as well, 7-0 is the expectation for Flash Wolves in the third round robin, which means, look, every single match they have from here on in should be an expected victory, including the 2 tonight. They've already beaten AHQ, they've already beaten Blank and Machi. That's it. Their strongest competition is out of the way. Now for the rest of the round robin here for Flash Wolves, it's stat padding.
And the thing here as well, that's something interesting to note, is that if Fireball do manage to upset tonight, they will actually be able to equal Hong Kong Attitude or overtake them, obviously, depending on their results. So, I mean, that's something that is a little bit interesting to talk about there because Fireball obviously looking very strong. They look like they've made, obviously, a lot of improvements over the previous weeks here. So, we've seen Flash Wolves drop a game earlier, in a bit of an upset to Machi. So, who's to say Fireball couldn't do the same tonight?
Well, look, I mean, it's very important for Fireball to tie up or even overtake Hong Kong Attitude, but more importantly for the rest of the teams, any of the top 3 that drop to Fireball, or for that matter, anyone below the top 3 as well, is just going to be messed up against the other 2, because we can see it's so tight between Flash Wolves, AHQ, and even Blank, who's only right now, I believe, 1 or 2 wins behind. So right now it can be anyone's game to take that top spot because we still have an entire round robin to go through after we finish this one. So if Fireball take a win tonight, that can mess anyone up. Remember, Flash Wolves could be right at the top right now if they hadn't already lost to Machi. So if any other team loses to Fireball tonight, that could be the same situation for them.
And Machi, obviously a team that have been building a lot of steam over the past few weeks as well. So they're going to be sitting there watching and hoping someone can take down one of these top teams in the likes of Flash Wolves and AHQ, because they, as you can see, are very hot behind on the heels of Blank. So any loss there is definitely going to be a disaster for those top 3 teams. But obviously our first matchup here, DeToNator.GOLD taking on SunSister. This one obviously very tight. Both of these teams, you know, generally going past just a 3-0 sort of stomping here. They're both quite evenly matched. You know, with XQQ being that sort of newer addition to SunSister, that's sort of been, I guess, you can see that they still haven't worked through all the kinks of, you know, playing with him, or anyone really on their team. They've still obviously shown quite a few bits of weakness there. It's going to be interesting to see now, coming off those Fireball losses yesterday, if both of these teams can make some adjustments for each other.
It's going to be SunSister coming back into sort of, I would say, full force. Last week they actually had Sherispan, their coach, playing for them. This week, if I'm not mistaken, we just saw Odinkun on stage with Dodolov not that long ago in their sort of pre-match talk. So Odinkun is back on the team. He was kind of missing. We see the full roster now for SunSister. It is the 6 expected players, minus Kira 44 is still on the bench, minus Sherispan, who's in the coach position.
And then of course DeToNator as well, not changing too much up at all. But let's also talk about like how they run their compositions lately. Saihate has been spending a fair amount of time on Soldier. Yoshiharu sometimes spends time on that Soldier as well. So the DPS players have been quite a lot more flexible than we've seen in the first few weeks as well. So DeToNator, I'd say, have that under their belt. SunSister though, what have they really got under their belt? A few weeks ago we would have said XQQ, but really he's if anything been a little bit of a hit or miss for them right now.
He feels more like a liability right now than a strength, and that's an issue when your core DPS player, the person you're there to depend on, the Anakin of your team, the Apudo of your team, the Zonda of your team, is currently doing things that are kind of questionable for the overall results to, you know, for where your team's trying to go.
Well, going back to the early weeks of banter there, you'd really, a little bit of
bit of hustle there.
a little bit of something coming through.
Odinkun's happy to be back.
Oh my goodness, it's happened. He smiled. He smiled. Tonight, I'm feeling good for SunSister. You can see right there.
They've already won.
XQQ, a new man. He's heard you, Avril. He's heard you. He's heard you speak, and now it looks like he's ready to go.
Unless he's smiling because he's going to pick May.
I mean, it might work for them, obviously, coming up against SunSister. But I feel, yeah, again, when you sort of look, you know, player to player on both of these teams, there's just a little bit more mechanical skill coming out.
Oh.
Someone's a fan of Naruto.
Is that a Naruto thing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, it is, Smite. Yes, it is.
Okay, cool.
Someone
Well-
here is also not a fan of Naruto, clearly.
Cool. Well, you guys didn't get my Star Wars reference before, so we're even. I mean, a few weeks ago. But
All right. Look,
I was like, did you hit one tonight? I'm
on
sitting here
to-
thinking,
moving on to Yoshiharu. Now, this is still, you know, DeToNator. Like I said, they're expected to win tonight. This is not a match where SunSister, I would say, are favored to win. The past results would say, look, it's getting better and better for DeToNator and worse, unfortunately, for SunSister. They're still getting better, but unfortunately, they're not improving at the same rate as other teams. So I'd be interested to see home side for SunSister. They've got to be feeling good. Smiles on their faces as well. Smiles on the DeToNator faces. Everyone's, I think, pretty happy about this game tonight because they know someone's going to take this. Someone's going to win here.
yeah, I mean, if you're one of these teams, right, you've got to be hyped up for this match. You've got to have a big smile on your face because not only is it a big rivalry because it's the 2 Japanese teams, you're also the bottom of the table, so you definitely want to try and take a game off each other there. But also, this is, if you're SunSister or DeToNator, the other team is your best shot at getting another win on the table. You don't have these come up very often, apparently. So this is another reason to have a big smile on your face. You're ready for a very intense match where you're not wondering, oh, maybe we're just going to get 3-0'd again. This is, we can take it to game 5 at the very worst.
And I think yesterday was actually really disappointing for that reason because if we're talking about expected wins or expected games where you have an opportunity to get a win, that was Fireball. That was Fireball for both teams. And for either team, if you weren't going to get the win, you wanted a close game, you wanted to take it to map 5, you want Fireball to win 3-2 if they're going to win at all. But the fact that they went 3-0 against both teams, I think it just shows the gap again between Fireball and the rest.
well, SunSister, obviously home day today, going to be picking Nepal first up. So, you know, changing things up slightly here. And I think you put it very eloquently before the broadcast here tonight as well. Tonight, one Japanese team is going home with a win, that's for sure. That's why I was laughing.
I want
this entire time.
to sort of bring attention to the Nepal pick really quickly, because something that is quite apparent for SunSister is it's very well known now that their favored map on Control's Lijiang. So the fact that they're picking Nepal kind of says to me the expectation was that DeToNator are preparing for Lijiang. So SunSister throw a spanner in the works to say, look, we're going to do Nepal. If you prep for the Lijiang, you're now maybe under prepped for Nepal. So that's kind of a good little curveball SunSister is already throwing into the works.
I think the second curveball they can also throw into it, which might still be an expected curveball, is that, at least on Village, quite an old strategy, maybe a few months old, right? Where you can actually throw Mei into that. So
I knew you were getting
yeah. I knew,
justifying XQQ.
look, you have to justify him somehow, because you know he's going to pick up Mei. You know it's going to happen. I just hope it doesn't happen in the middle of a round when there's 50% or more on the point and he just swaps. He just swaps on the Mei, because it's happened before and it's never been good for his team. So taking it out straight from the start on at least Village, I believe, is actually a pretty good map to do so, where you can actually block off that high ground entrance. Now it's going to be on DeToNator to read that that is likely to happen, take a different path, try and bait out the wall, and play around that fact.
And look, there's even an argument to actually bring up the Orisa on Sanctum as well. It's one of the only maps that's become, Sanctum has become that map where like, hey look, Junkrat's viable, Orisa's viable, suddenly everyone can get played. Most balanced map in Overwatch.
Jeff Kaplan's favorite map. Gets to see every single hero on Nepal, but here we are, easy. We're into Nepal. Who would have thought?
I mean, you know, there was a few options for them to have, but, you know, you're going to have to pick one of them. Nepal shaking things up just a touch here. I think one of the big things here is obviously, for the side of DeToNator.GOLD, you know, Yoshiharu generally playing one of the better divas in the tournament. And I mean, again, you can see him already picking this one up. This is going to make things very hard for SunSister, and you see Odin-kun on the Soldier as well, so already looking difficult.
Yeah, SunSister actually going for just full-on triple DPS here, you know, putting XQQ on Genji, which is something that we do like to see. We like him playing those more standard heroes because he is a very good Genji and he can get a lot of good results. This opening skirmish going to be super important. SunSister have the option to just full-on dive onto Saihate or either of the two supports. Very easy targets when you're running that triple DPS. You can get in there very quickly, get that first kill, and cap the point and just entrench yourself.
Well, SunSister do find that early kill onto Saihate, catching him out of position so slightly here. So things looking good for SunSister as they're now going to be trying to move in and really bully the rest of DeToNator off this point. But they are going to be getting a trade of their own there. Odin-kun going to be taken out on the Soldier. So things are looking slightly better now for SunSister as they do pick themselves up a couple of extra trades in the mix here. But DeToNator answering back extremely quickly. Anakin now with the Pulse Bomb as well. Won't even need to use it in this fight as DeToNator out of nowhere coming back from that early disadvantage and getting the first cap.
See, the thing is, your numbers advantage doesn't mean too much if you take so long to engage that their reinforcements come out during the fight anyway. And also, if you are Odin-kun and you're the third DPS, you're that soldier, you're still at risk for Anakin. And Anakin is a great tracer as well, always able to get into the backline and find his target. And now, like you said, he's got Pulse Bomb, but it does miss. Just like Mollis' one too.
Yep, throws it out, finds absolutely nothing with that, but now in a great flanking position there, doing a nice, decent amount of damage here. But with DeToNator still having that player advantage, but Saihate, Helix rocketing Mollis back to the spawn. Good work again from DeToNator.GOLD now. The rest of SunSister smartly just retreat back there. And DeToNator not having to commit too much into that fight. Both pulse bombs obviously being used from both teams there. Very good stuff for DeToNator though to keep this one held down.
Well, we're not even into 40% yet, so SunSister have got to start thinking of a plan because there are two defensive ults ready for DeToNator right now, and that is the biggest counter for XQQ. But here they come right now.
The Transcendence right into the counterplay there to stop XQQ's Dragon Blade doing anything, and XQQ not going to be too happy with that, as well as the rest of SunSister not finding any openings here on the DeToNator side, completely getting brick walled out of this first stage here.
And DeToNator also conservative enough to only use the Transcendence. No need for the sound barrier because you also took out XQQ straight at the start of the fight. SunSister though still have saved up for 4 ultimates. They can even wait for Mollis to get his Pulse Bomb, a pretty quick charging ultimate, but it will be matched by Anakin's as well. But sound barrier is always going to be there.
And about it being there, it's already just been dropped now for the side of SunSister, but XQQ taken out early yet again. Still nowhere to be found in this fight. The Tactical Visor from Saihate going to be doing a very good amount of work here in a nice flanking position as well. That Transcendence finding no one to save at all. And again, the rest of SunSister just being toppled like dominoes right now.
And they're committing ultimates to a fight where they've already lost Odin-kun, who, by the way, had Tactical Visor ready to go. So he's out of the fight and ultimate's out of the fight. Transcendence was used. This is really just hoping to win the fight there because, of course, as we're nearing 100%, that was really their last shot to go. And losing Mollis at the start of that with Tactical Visor was the biggest piece of the puzzle that they needed.
And DeToNator just in a class of their own right there on that first stage, just showing SunSister the absolute business there. SunSister obviously with a decent little start, but DeToNator just too strong as a whole.
And there's still so many more things that DeToNator could have done in a lot of those fights if their plan of attack had already failed, right? Like they killed Odenkin when he had Tactical Visor, like I was saying before, but even if he did use it, there's still Yoshiharu with Defense Matrix to nullify it. There's still more ultimates in the bank anyway, and they didn't even come close to capping that point at all. That was a complete shutout by DeToNator.
Well, I'd like to see SunSister change things up here. Obviously, that triple DPS not working out too well for them. At the moment, looks like they're going to be sticking with the same plan here, but things could obviously go a little bit differently here on the stage.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem for them right now is that Anakin is actually going pretty unchecked because your 3 DPS are just going to be constantly diving the backline. Odenkin is really the only one who can defend himself, but Mollis just gets caught out trying to dive, and this should be a point cap for DeToNator.
So you can see the rest of the SunSister players dropping very low here. Zetman finding a nice trade there onto Anakin as he tries to get up into the back lines there. But DeToNator having a lot stronger positioning right now, really going to be bullying SunSister and getting any decent room to move into the point. Zetman getting booped off the edge there. Very unlucky, didn't have the jump up at all, but XQQ will get himself a mech. And now SunSister out of nowhere answering extremely quickly there, picking up a plethora of kills, but the rest of DeToNator still there just to clean up these last few kills. This is on Mollis to get some contests going right now. Doesn't have much in the cooldown department. Oh, almost getting booped off the edge there. 1 second left on the recall. Almost sent back to the spawn himself there, but DeToNator do pick themselves up the cap. Anyone from the SunSister side to get themselves back on this, but DeToNator will be respawning and able to re-engage.
This is just a flood of respawns right here, right now, but Saihate does eventually go down, and XQQ needs to find something with this Dragon Blade.
Well, he found a little bit there. The rest of SunSister will be around to back things up and push the rest of DeToNator back off the point. They're getting very close to capping this one out from DeToNator's under their nose right now, and indeed they do cap this one back, and now Odenkun in a good position as well, does have that Tactical Visor to work with, but they do have that sound barrier for the side of DeToNator.GOLD, so this is going to be great for them in this next engagement if they can set up position.
It's going to make Odenkin's Tactical Visor a whole lot harder to use. DeToNator, they do have the tools to go in and win a fight because they've got the 2 defensive ultimates, which is going to be able to let them survive through Tactical Visor, and then they have Defense Matrix anyway. But SunSister, they're going to throw it out, but like I said, DeToNator,
He's got someone in his sights right now, but it's right into the Transcendence there to be able to keep a lot of these DeToNator players alive. And now the counter Tactical Visor coming through from Saihate. This is where things are looking to get frisky up here. And indeed, this is where DeToNator are answering back, getting themselves a quick couple of kills there, but Odenkun doesn't even need the Tactical Visor as he hits that Helix Rocket straight into Saihate, but they're already being pushed back off the point. DeToNator do indeed get themselves the recap here, and now pushing SunSister all the way back to the choke.
DeToNator probably could have spread out those defensive ultimates a little bit more. I mean, using Sound Barrier and Transcendence at the same time, not the most effective bargain there, but luckily for them, SunSister also reacted with a lot of ults of their own. Odenkin's Tactical Visor was used, and that's the big one that you want to bait out right as well. And Transcendence was also tried to use to match as well. The big thing is they actually captured the point after committing those ultimates as well, so they can be quite happy with that.
Well, XQQ needs to hit that Energizer battery soon and charge up that Dragon Blade. Obviously, Odenkun getting close to another Tactical Visor as well. They will have that sound barrier to work with here, but this is almost going to be a throwaway bit of an engagement here if DeToNator can just pick themselves up an early pick into this one. The sound barrier coming through, self-destruct thrown out, finds absolutely nothing there, and SunSister not finding any kills off the back of this sound barrier is not looking very good. Now XQQ with the Dragon Blade, but he's already down 2 members, only finds 1 there, and make that a second, but it's definitely not going to be enough as DeToNator now just clean house with the rest of these SunSister players left around the point.
And just look at the timing that XQQ pulled out the Dragon Blade as well. 2 of his teammates had already died, and sure, like, maybe there's a bit of reaction time in there, but at the same time, that's an ultimate committed to a losing fight, while DeToNator is also still in control of the point, also still racking up the percentage towards their victory. Now we're nearing 100%, and SunSister have to sprint to the point. Yeah, they've got Tac Visor, but it's really got to be the Pulse Bomb that finds the kill. But getting a pick onto the Winston at the start, that's huge.
Into the overtime, and this is when SunSister need to come up big. That Transcendence coming in from Dodloff, looking to keep these last few DeToNator members alive, but the cap is going up for SunSister. They do indeed take this one back, and just when they needed to do it, obviously getting right in there, getting those early picks, and that Transcendence from Dodoloff, just not enough to keep DeToNator alive through this one.
And SunSister still hold on to their own Transcendence as well, which will be huge once Saihate gets towards that Tactical Visor. A great defensive ultimate for that. But then again, DeToNator coming up the sound barrier too means that they can just rush in, engage, and just try and brute force their way with the bigger health bars, right? Because SunSister also, remember, they just used their own Tactical Visor.
Oh, I like this from SunSister, getting a little bit more aggressive out of the gate this time, not letting DeToNator get any room. That Transcendence going to be enough for them to get quite aggressive as DeToNator try to make their way through the choke point. And look at XQQ just hunting down Saihate as well, just to put the icing on the cake there.
This is great as well because now they're at 80%. This is going to be DeToNator's last push. XQQ got a lot of the damage in the kills, which charged up his own ultimate. Adenkin probably won't have his one during the next fight, but SunSister have no defensive ultimates left. They don't have a Diva, which means that Saihate should be able to go huge. It's going to be all on Zetman to get in his face.
And they've stacked up in the choke point here. The Dragon Blade coming through. The sound barrier coming through from DeToNator, keeping them alive through that. There's nothing found there from XQQ's Dragon Blade. Now Saihate with the Tactical Visor, looking to find some kills of his own. They're right now in that 5v5, but DeLave going to be finishing this one up, picking himself up at that player advantage for DeToNator. Mollus's Pulse Bomb finding one, but is it enough now for the rest of SunSister as DeToNator now have regained the cap? Overtime ticking down. Mollus in the nick of time has got back in there, contested and picked himself up a kill here as well. Another Pulse Bomb now being thrown out from Anakin there. Picks himself up a double and the win for DeToNator.
That one's a lot more, that was a lot more close. And that's what I'm expecting out of the SunSister DeToNator matchup, right? And you can see the big difference between their compositions, right? And the big one was when there's a soldier ultimate up, one team has a Diva, the other one doesn't, which makes them a whole lot more vulnerable. It also puts a lot more responsibility on the Winston player to get in the face of that soldier and just deny him with 1,000 hit points worth of monkey to get through before your Tactical Visor hits anyone else. There's also a barrier you can put down. The other option, of course, is XQQ to find him and kill him, even with Dragon Blade, but we saw how that went at the end of the last fight. He spent half the Dragon Blade looking at a wall.
Well, good reaction now coming up from SunSister. You see Odinkun going to be picking up the Diva of their own this time. And that's sort of what I mentioned before getting into the series here. Yoshiharu's Diva sort of being that key to success for the side of DeToNator.
Yeah, we're going to meet both teams up on the high ground here and just look for either one of the Winstons to die first or one of the backline. Usually there's Zenyatta's as well. Very, very difficult for them to stay alive.
Mollus, great stuff there, getting himself up into the back lines, really assisting and helping taking out DeLave early into this one. As well now, SunSister picking themselves up a pair. Do have that early player advantage. Control point going to unlock, but DeToNator should be able to get back and contest this if they're smart about it.
It should go over to SunSister now. I don't think DeToNator have time, but now it's going to put a lot more pressure on them, right? Because they've got to win a fight and actually take the point very cleanly, because any even fights, SunSister are going to be very happy to go for.
Anakin's out of this one early on, and SunSister still taking this fight straight to DeToNator. DeToNator need to fall back here, and look at this. This is going to be a complete wipeout coming through from SunSister. Great stuff there, and DeToNator just a little bit shaky there on that piece of offense.
At least their engagements are quick. At least they're not losing too much time. But the big thing is that they're all diving in and they have no plan of escape, right? As soon as something goes badly, for example, Anakin getting taken out at the start of the fight, they don't have any way to back out. They don't have any way to get out and stop feeding over even more ultimate charge. Look at XQQ, almost up to that Tactical Visor. Mollus is going to find a Pulse Bomb pretty soon.
Well, a lot of pressure being put on Saihate here, but he does manage to escape with his life. That Transcendence now coming through from Night Owl, looking to push SunSister over the edge through this fight here. Mollus with that Pulse Bomb as well, just looking for a target. DeToNator getting very close to the cap, but with the rest of their members dropping now, SunSister still holding on to this one.
Yeah, and it's going to be very hard for DeToNator to claw their way back. They need to go in and bait out ultimates. They've got less than half of the stage to go through because SunSister are hitting 60%. They've got to burn through 4 ultimates as well, and they don't have very many to go off on their own. They can throw out defensive ultimates preemptively or in reaction to something like XQQ's Tactical Visor to try and nullify it, but it's going to be a hard matchup.
I feel like Saihate really needs to look at getting a little bit better positioning, but that first kill coming up in the way of DeToNator.GOLD is going to be very good there. Samurai D does have that ultimate up as well to really contest this point. That sound barrier as well from DeToNator. This is the fight that they have to win. As SunSister 82% now. A lot of ultimates being committed here from the side of DeToNator. That Tactical Visor from Saihate coming up quite big indeed, getting a lot of damage out, and now he's able to finish this one off onto Mollus there, and now DeToNator can set themselves up in a decent position and try to just trench themselves into this point.
And SunSister trying to win the stage right then and there, spending all of their ultimates. They've only got self-destruct now, so they still have 100% of the point for DeToNator to get, so they've got time. They can go in, buy some ultimates, try and bait them out of DeToNator as well, try and find value with low-cost ones like Pulse Bomb, try and find a kill at the start of a match just like that. SunSister's plan needs to be for the long term and not just trying to win every single fight.
Well, Saihate up on this great position on the high ground here, able to just pop shots willy-nilly out onto the side of SunSister as they try to push their way in. So a decent amount of damage being sent out, no cooldowns to work with as well here from the side of SunSister, and as you can see, the rest of the team now just getting picked apart here. XQQ has nothing to do with this fight. Elu does get himself a mech, but is that really enough? I don't think so.
Oh, that fight went so one-sided as well. DeToNator didn't have to spend any ultimates, and more importantly, Saihate could charge up his own one. He's 3/4 of the way there. During this next fight, he will have his tactical visor. The best bet for SunSister right now is to try and bait out a few ultimates like that, but they're not ready. They're going to come up during the fight, so that's quite difficult to bait out as well. So it's a hard question. Do you go in and try and win the fight right now as SunSister? Try and get your own ultimates during the fight? Try and out-frag DeToNator? Because look, they're actually coming up to their own ultimates.
Well, Yoshiharu going to be throwing out that self-destruct. Doesn't catch anything with it. Samurai D's does hit the Primal Rage, but that sneaky back cap coming through from Mollis is going to be huge. But look at this, the rest of his team dropping down. It might be to no avail right here. Looking to get a little bit of contest coming through. But I feel like DeToNator should easily be able to deal with this one. Mollis actually escapes with his life as well, though.
That is massive for a few reasons, right? That fight brought out a few ultimates from DeToNator, and SunSister put the pause button on DeToNator's progress as well. Now they can just win one more fight. And look at those ultimates. They've got 5 coming up, and Elu should get sound barrier during the next fight. Yes, there are defensive ultimates ready for DeToNator, so they can survive the onslaught. It's going to be about surviving through those ults, not overlapping them.
Well, both Transcendences now coming out from both teams, really looking to just stagger this fight out on the point. But obviously SunSister got themselves up to 99% with that sneaky back cap for self-destruct, picking up some kills here for Odinkun, but the rest of his team yet again just getting picked apart. Great stuff here from DeToNator to hold it down. Overtime ticking down. No one from the side of SunSister around at all. And DeToNator going to be picking it up and picking up the first map right there, control point going into DeToNator's favor.
Oh, I got a lot more hype for that village matchup than I should have. That was so close, and I've got to say it was quite well played out by SunSister, especially for the very start of it, and especially that sneaky cap. That did a lot of work, but in the end, DeToNator, they played the ultimate fights, the fights that actually mattered, a whole lot better.
I mean, yeah, very good stuff. You know, there was moments of greatness there coming through from SunSister, but I feel, you know, just the adjustments were just a little bit too late there. I think they needed to bust that D.Va out far earlier. I feel like the soldier on the side of DeToNator was just going unchecked for far too long there. You saw once, obviously, they put that pressure onto Saihate, things changed for them quite well, but after that, you know, it was just a little bit too late.
I wanted to bring that up as well. I definitely agree with you. The D.Va from the D.Va out of SunSister was actually, I think, kind of required for a different reason. You said to shut down Saihate on the soldier. I agree with that. But also, I just don't believe the triple DPS is coordinated and refined enough on the side of SunSister for them to really reliably bring that out and have an expected result that they want. When they had it on Shrine and even on to Sanctum, it was kind of disconnected. I mean, right now, Zetman is a tank on his own. I don't think he's impactful enough, unfortunately, to really carry the weight of the solo tank position. They need someone like Odinkun on the D.Va to support Zetman, because Zetman, look, he's in situations that even when he has a D.Va there, he's unfortunately, he's getting taken out quite early anyway. Also, I just don't think Odinkun right now on the soldier is really as impactful as someone like Saihate. Now, what's interesting about the DeToNator side is Saihate has really picked up on his soldier. I just still don't really rate his Tracer personally, but Anakin can pick up the Tracer for him, and that's fine. The double hit scan coming out of DeToNator was really strong.
On the note as well of Anakin on that Tracer, right, he was having enough of an effect on to Odenkin when he was playing Soldier. The difference there was Odenkin he's not like Zonda or other players that can protect themselves on Soldier or have a D.Va to call over to them, right? He can't stand his ground against Anakin, and Anakin was finding him in the backlines pretty often, and Odenkin was just having trouble finding any value. At least when you're playing D.Va, right, you can just listen out for the Soldier ult and then go use Defense Matrix. That's kind of the least amount of value that you're going to get usually. So again, the swap just brings even more value from that. You're taking him off someone who's just getting harassed constantly, if not just dying from Anakin's Tracer, and putting him on a tank that has 600 health points, huge amounts of mobility, and one of the biggest abilities to shut down a lot of ultimates in the game.
The other problem is XQQ, unfortunately, on Genji is not that consistent. We saw the results there. didn't have that much impact. When you put him on Soldier, suddenly he's a lot better. And this is kind of where you want XQQ to be on. If you can permanently put XQQ on Soldier, I think that's kind of the result. I think that's exactly where you need to be. We kind of said this about, I've mentioned this about other teams as well, but Zonda, Genji, and Soldier, it's like a day and night difference. It's not because Zonda is not a good Genji, it's more so because where Genji currently sits. Zonda does so much better on Soldier than Genji, and I believe the same is true for XQQ on Soldier rather than Genji.
That is something I was going to bring up as well just then, is that yesterday, you know, when we saw XQQ's Genji, and obviously he was coming up against the Pudo's Genji, so obviously that looks a little bit classier as a whole, and I was sort of going to mention, when XQQ is now on this Genji and he's playing against DeToNator, which would obviously, stats speak for themselves, you know, DeToNator are a weaker team than Fireball, you'd think that he'd be able to get a lot more done, but a lot of his timings, there's time and time again where he sort of hits that Dragon Blade and finds absolutely minimal amount with it. I think the most kills he got with it was maybe 1 plus a mech, and so is that really to do with where Genji sits in the meta, or is he just not really...
I think that's just situations that are coming up a little bit too often, even for the best Genjis, but the players that are slightly worse at Genji are going to find themselves in those situations a lot more often. You could see that during the poll for XQQ. If he wasn't using Dragon Blade into a sound barrier, a Transcendence, he was dashing in and immediately getting knocked back away by a Lucio or even a Diva, and then just in too much of a dangerous position because he hasn't found his reset and has to just basically try and get out. And then when that didn't happen, he dies. So
it's both. It's because, look, as a Genji player himself, I don't think he's even as good as Apudo, and Apudo's set a pretty decent high standard, and Apudo's not even the best Genji in the entire tournament, right? So XQQ has got some way to go before he even gets there himself on a personal level, but then when you look at it compositionally, you're going up against a Zenyatta, you're going to get discorded, you don't have a Diva on your team to give you that Matrix protection, you don't have an Ana on your team to even give you the Nano Boost for that 50% damage reduction, you will get melted. You notice that when Genji players get in those situations, with their composition being that way, and the enemy composition being what I just described, you're forced into a deflect super early, you get chunked down, and then you're straight out of the fight, and that's why you're not getting that much damage done, you're not getting that much work done. It's better for XQQ to stick onto the Soldier, much like what DeToNator were running. If XQQ and SunSister were running that exact same lineup, I think this game would have been much closer.
And there's something you mentioned to me as well prior to this, is that the SunSister team have sort of mentioned they play around, you know, XQQ's play style there. Do you feel that that's really working out for them? Because Mollis was definitely sort of the standout player, I feel, for the side of SunSister. I mean, especially on Village right at the end there, getting that sneaky little backcap was obviously working out really well for them. DeToNator.GOLD actually going to be picking up Eichenwalde, so we saw this come through yesterday, but just off that last
To answer your last question though, I do agree. I think Mollis has been stepping up. Mollis has sort of been a bit of a question mark ever since SunSister had that change up. You know, Night Owl's going onto the support. Mollis is going from support onto DPS, mainly Tracer. What's that performance look like? And now we kind of know. And we've even now seen Mollis pick up the Genji himself. So this guy has been really looking pretty flexible. And this is what I like out of the guy. And I think Mollis has been performing and really showing his sort of horizontal flexibility as well, which has been really, really impressive, especially in a case where I think XQQ has been kind of underperforming, and it's less of SunSister playing around it's less of XQQ playing around SunSister more. It feels like a disconnect there. Like the fact that SunSister have to play around XQQ shouldn't even really be that way.
And this was a sort of thing I noticed when he first sort of came into their team there, and it was sort of me really reading into it that he does look like he's a bit of, you used the word liability earlier tonight, he just looks like he doesn't really want to be there. Obviously him smiling tonight made it look like, you know, he wants to be part of the team, the power of friendship coming through, prevailing the day there. I feel like if they sort of take that mentality away of playing around XQQ and sort of play around the situation that they're in, they're going to find themselves with a lot more success.
I think that was a lot less the case tonight, though, at least on Nepal, right? We didn't see any halfway through a stage swaps onto something like a Mei from XQQ. I don't think anything like that came out. Maybe you got a little bit emotional over some of those Dragon Blades not quite working out, but apart from that, like it seems like they were playing a lot more on the same page. And it's just to touch on what Avril said as well. Like XQQ, I feel like maybe he's underperforming, but I also think he just hasn't really improved since the first week we've seen him, whereas Mollis, he stepped up a lot.
And I wanted to sort of set the record straight as well, is that I don't personally have a problem with the fringe picks. You can bring out a May, you can bring out even an Orisa or whatever you want, as long as it's a set play. This is a planned thing that your team has prepared for, practiced for, and planned to bring out, not something that you randomly pull through midway through a game like you've mentioned, Smite. And this is where the disconnect comes from, because I'm not even aware that his team really plays around that. It's apparent in interviews as well. His team says, look, we just kind of let him do what he needs to do, we'll play around it, and I'm not too sure that's the way to go, and probably is the reason why the results are the way they are now.
All right, Izzy, yesterday...
I'm just thinking everyone needs to get over there and coach these boys after that one.
Just tell XQQ to maybe plan out his picks a little bit more, but DeToNator, right? We saw Eichenwalde twice yesterday, both played by DeToNator, and they had one of the more unique strategies on Eichenwalde. It's becoming a little bit more common, but they do run a May, and it's not just trying to emulate an XQQ, right? It is with an actual plan in style, right? They use the wall to traverse around to that balcony. You can actually see it on the top right side of your screen, where someone is running around up there, but when they are on attack, they do like to run up there and wall over, take the high ground, that balcony. It takes a while to set up, so if it doesn't work, then it does set them pretty far behind, but we'll talk about that when DeToNator do get to attack. Because right now they're defending, and they are running Saihate back on that soldier, and that's a choice that I agree with.
It's going to be interesting to see what XQQ is going to opt to go with. It's going to be a Genji again, so a little bit of a redemption coming through, I feel. Let's see if he can get anything done with the Genji coming into Eichenwalde here. SunSister just probing around, checking where, obviously, these DeToNator players are positioned. They do catch a Sly Anakin out on the flank side there, and now should be the time where they're going to be looking to move in.
The important thing as well is that SunSister are also running a Zenka back on that D.Va, a bit more of a defensive setup, but here comes the dive coming out from SunSister trying to get in, but this is XQQ just trying to get a whole lot of damage onto a D.Va. Well, you might charge your ultimate, but it's not going to get any kills yet.
Oh, well, the Discord orb finds its way onto Anakin, and it's going to be Mollis just picking him up there. XQQ putting a decent amount of pressure onto him, but there are already two players down here for the side of SunSister, and DeToNator still holding out such strong position up on that high ground. XQQ sent back to spawn as well, so this fight's going to be reset once more now, and let's see if SunSister can make the changes that they need coming into this next sort of fight here. They need to find Anakin early and put that pressure onto him and not let him find that early pick.
And Saihate did a majority of the damage during that fight as well. You can see he's just under 90% towards his own ultimate, so Tactical Visor will be a thing. So Mollis, if he's been tracking that ultimate, he'll know he can get a pulse bomb onto Saihate. That sets his team way further up into the fight. They're now going to take the high ground. Great, that's going to get Saihate off it. They've also got the tools to dive him when he's on the ground. You've got a Genji, you've got a Tracer. You can get into the backline and kill Saihate.
Yeah, it's great stuff from Mollis as well, just opting to take a different route from the rest of his team. As I say that, he does go with the rest of SunSister here, but Saihate obviously noticing this one, positions himself in a great spot here just to be moderately uncontested and do a very decent amount of damage up in the back lines here. And he does have that Tactical Visor now up to work with. The Transcendence coming through from Night Owl, really looking to take this fight. This is going to have to be them winning this one as they commit a lot to this one now. The Tactical Visor coming through from Saihate. They do lose Dodeloff in this one, so there is not going to be anything coming through from him into this next fight. The Dragon Blade now from XQQ as well needs to find more, but Mollis' Pulse Bomb is going to do the work indeed, and this is surely going to be SunSister picking themselves up the point here.
Saihate slipping a little bit on the trigger finger during that fight as well. Tactical Visor activated near the end of Transcendence. Okay, you might get some value after that. You've also got a D.Va in your face. Adenkin was happy to just turn around and hold right click, just completely block that, and then eventually, yeah, sure, loses mech, but if that's the only thing you lose to a Tactical Visor while the rest of your team is cleaning up with ultimates, you will take the point.
Now I'm liking this from SunSister, getting a little bit aggressive here, but DeToNator do manage to gain themselves that high ground position. Nice sleep dart coming through there actually to buy themselves a little bit more time. Samurai D caught out of position on the low ground. Can they pick that kill up on him? That would be extremely huge for them here now. Anakin does have that pulse bomb, but pressured out straight away. Zetman will pick him up. And this is now looking good for SunSister. If they can get themselves control of this high ground, they should be able to make a decent amount of movement on this card here. You can see that pressure already being put onto Saihate, but he does have Samurai D right by his side, but the pulse bomb there coming through onto Dodeloff. And now Mollis looking to clean up the rest of these DeToNator players on the high ground. Great momentum here coming through from SunSister.
And that was all from a pulse bomb. They got a frag at the start as well, but a pulse bomb really sealed the deal, so SunSister were very conservative in that. And now once they push the payload through underneath the bridge, there's a nice wide open space where no one can hide from XQQ and his Dragon Blade. You've got to be careful of Saihate though. He will be leading up to that tactical visor, but Anakin's a big one too. This pulse bomb finds anyone.
Comes right up behind, takes Elu out, but the fight is still happening up in the front lines there. And Anakin will stop the payload moving, but now Odinkun looking to get back onto the payload, looking to find himself. The Tracer still hasn't caught him out just yet. Extremely elusive play coming through there from Anakin to really stop this push coming. And now XQQ all over him here. Does manage to get the health pack. Can he pick the kill up though? This would be huge right now, and indeed he does. Anakin, the saving grace here for DeToNator.
Anakin just got so much value out of that. Not only did he kill a Lucio, a Genji, he held the payload up long enough for DeToNator to come back in for another fight. That's after SunSister committed a whole lot of ultimates to try and push the payload through one last time. DeToNator have a second shot on the second checkpoint.
SunSister just getting a little bit too big for their boots there, I feel. Just trying to push up a little bit too aggressively. And obviously, Anakin making them pay right there with that. Now the pressure again up onto the high ground. But DeToNator are now going to be able to set up very decently for this one. XQQ, still no Dragon Blade, just looking to build this one out. Pulse bomb thrown out, finds Dodeloff as well. So that's going to be a good start there for SunSister yet again. But look at all these ultimates on the side of DeToNator. They can really just play this fight out for the long game here.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a whole lot, especially Saihate. He's going to be waiting for that perfect moment because he knows if he uses tactical visor, it needs to get a lot of value. Usually he's going to be looking to get up onto that high ground. That's going to be big. And also Denkin needs his defense matrix down, or hey, kick him out of the mech.
Yeah, and Samurai D just hitting the Primal Rage there as well. Look at that, they only really use one ultimate to really win that fight out there, and things are now looking very good for DeToNator.GOLD. 1 minute 20 left on the clock, 5 ultimates in the bank. Saihate sitting up on the high ground as well, does have support from the rest of his team. DeToNator should... SunSister are going to have a very hard time pushing this cart over checkpoint number 2.
Well, easy. That's because they've only got about half the ultimates as well, right? XQQ is coming up to Dragon Blade. He needs to get a ton of value out of this. If not finding Saihate, he needs to find the rest of his team, right? Because Saihate is going to be the biggest thing to worry about unless Denkin's ready to go.
Anakin.
But that's just going to set them even further behind.
Now, that's going to buy them a decent amount of time. 50 seconds left on the clock here, and still DeToNator so much to work with, not committing too much to that as well. Anakin just being so good right now on this Tracer. Getting that early pick, really slowing this whole entire payload push down, and Saihate's position as well will have that nano boost to work with into this next fight.
They know what the plan is for the next fight. Also, hiding away just allows them to not die before they get their ultimates off. And at the very least, they'll be able to use them during that fight and demand attention, right? Now, SunSister, they're going to gun for the point, but where's the tac visor?
There it is, being used right now. The Dragon Blade needs to come through from XQQ very soon here. They have already lost themselves Samurai D, and indeed, here we go. XQQ picks up the first. Can he get himself a second? Can't connect with the blade right there. Looks like Dodeloff, being far too elusive, finally takes him down, and he needs to get himself this kill onto Saihate as well. They get it, and this is now SunSister winning themselves out the fight.
Anakin only getting one kill with the XQQ only getting one kill with the Dragon Blade is still so much more than what we saw Saihate get with a nano boost as well and his tactical visor straight into defense matrix. And I don't believe he even got the mech out either. DeToNator, are they going to try and go in for one last defense? I don't believe so.
Well, explosions happening there in the choke to really slow things down there. And now SunSister back on this momentum train, really starting to push ahead. But DeToNator picking themselves up a couple. SunSister need to retreat off the back of this here. And now, I feel like SunSister played that very well, but they've just committed a little bit too much into this next fight, and they've lost all momentum.
They are swapping their composition up, though, and that's the key thing to note. XQQ is going to be on the Roadhog, which is interesting. The Mollusk can play that too, but he's going to stick on that Tracer, and they're just looking for something completely different, right? Shutting down Samurai D as soon as he jumps in. XQQ will be massive with that, with the hook as well. If you can ever find Anakin on that Tracer as well, that's another key target. These hooks are going to be so central to how SunSister play because they're not relying on ultimates. 45 seconds to go, they don't have time to charge them up.
Well, that's a tall order to ask for there, as Anakin has been so elusive there, catches a mech, but that's not what they were looking for on the menu tonight just yet. And SunSister still probing, looking for a kill. Now, but there we go, just jumps right on top of Anakin's head there. Takes him out, XQQ being integral to this offense right now. The Transcendence coming through, from Night Owl, going to allow the rest of these SunSister players to get very aggressive. The Larv being taken out as well, and now they're getting themselves very close to these ultimates. This is going to be huge here. The hook coming through there. Anakin trying to be the saving grace here on the hog. Not enough, and not today. And this is looking great now for SunSister, rolling all the way through to checkpoint number 3. The Primal Rage is going to have to come up big with that sound barrier. Yoshiharu, the self-destruct master, coming in right at the end there. Saihate's here to save the day. Do not worry about it, and DeToNator will be able to stop this offense in its tracks from SunSister and hold this one just before point number 3.
Saving the day, perhaps. Saving the very end of the checkpoint, perhaps. But look at how far SunSister made it. And remember how much they had a bit of a struggle during the second checkpoint too. So the fact is, they managed to go for a composition change into the third checkpoint, and it worked wonders for them. The fact that XQQ can just so happily swap onto that Roadhog and get a ton of value from not just the hooks, but literally walking up to people and left-clicking them. Literally walking close to people and right-clicking them. He was getting so many one-shots during that was the majority of the reason that his team could push that payload that far through the third checkpoint.
You gotta love it coming out from DeToNator though as well, when it looked like things were very grim for them there. You know, had those few ultimates to work with, you know, players down as well. That self-destruct coming up very big, and obviously that sound barrier as well, just allowing them to stop that momentum in his tracks. Really love to see it there from DeToNator now. They're obviously gonna have to get all the way to the end there, or just very, very close, because SunSister definitely lucked out, I feel, moving into checkpoint number 3 a little bit.
Oh, is it luck, or is it just the most amazing Roadhog left clicks you've ever seen? But talking about this at the start of Eichenwalde, when DeToNator were defending, they're now attacking, and they do go for that wall strategy where you do just jump over the other side, set yourself up on the balcony with little risk. The only thing you have to worry about is someone diving up onto that balcony that you use the wall to get up onto. And we did see that basically crumble for them against one of the teams. So we'll see if that's going to be counted out by SunSister, because remember, SunSister were watching yesterday. They would have seen the strategy twice in a row from DeToNator. But also, both times it didn't actually work out for DeToNator, and they were happy to swap off onto a different composition, try something else. Maybe they'll just be doing that from the start, and it looks like that's exactly what is happening. They're just going for Farah right off the bat.
Exactly that there, Smite. You feel that obviously since SunSister were watching yesterday, they would have seen that piece of strategy come out, and I mean, you know, you don't really expect it to work 2 times in a row there, and indeed, SunSister were ready for it. Oh, XQQ, the true ninja right now, right behind this entire team, has caught their position out. This should be disastrous here for DeToNator.GOLD. And indeed, SunSister taking this fight very aggressive right into the faces of DeToNator.GOLD. XQQ actually falling here, so this is going to be a good start now for DeToNator, but Mollis right in the back lines here. He's got no support though, so this is going to be very hard for him to finish things up, because the rest of his team are getting destroyed by Anakin up in the air.
The team was just too split up during that as well. XQQ, I mean, yeah, okay, it made me laugh. I was kind of holding my breath there, trying not to laugh, but he didn't really get anything out of that. He got a bit of damage, a bit of harass, but DeToNator just kind of turned around and said, okay, we're just going to kill your team then, and they capped the point incredibly easily, cleanly enough for them to start contesting the top of the castle, especially because they actually have Anakin on the Farah. Well, they did until he died. Probably won't change though. Maybe he'll change.
Well, that's where that level of disconnect sort of comes through there. You know, you can see XQQ almost saying like, oh look, they're here, come guys, and the rest of the team going, oh, should we go? Should we go? And so if they really committed to that, it might have worked out well for them. But again, very aggressive positioning, very easy to punish them for that one. And indeed, they do so. XQQ as well, now being caught out of position, taken out again early into these fights here. And now Zetman going to be sitting up here on this high ground, going to be able to hold this one down for the rest of his squishy supports there. But Anakin's now back into the fray, getting himself a decent amount of rockets landed there, really forcing these SunSister players back off this high ground position.
Look at how he dips in and out of line of sight of them as well, just in case anyone's there to get to him as well. Just popping up, throwing out a rocket, getting some damage, and then going back to safety, because he has to play safe, right? He doesn't have a mercy in this guy keeping him alive. Any health he loses, he has to go back down to the ground, and see, that's also the danger as well.
Yeah, SunSister now getting themselves back into that high ground position. Taking out Anakin's a great start for them. They do lose Zetman in that, but I mean, that's not too much of a big deal if they can continue this fight at that same sort of intensity now. The sound barrier coming through for the side of SunSister, really looking to push them ahead here. And now XQQ with the Dragon Blade as well. Does have the support, but not a life, as the rest of DeToNator just wiping them out there. Anakin already back in the fray of things. The Transcendence now being committed as well from SunSister. So a massive overcommitment coming through from these players here, as they're still looking like they're going to lose the fight. The Pulse Bomb from DeToNator just to clean this one up.
I mean, the best value you got out of those late ultimates was getting a pulse bomb out of DeToNator. Not the greatest of trades for a Transcendent, so unless they're looking to change, which doesn't look like they are, as he dies again. Night Owl, Zenyatta not quite working out. They are being locked in the spawn right here, and this is going to be the third checkpoint. And SunSister, when they were on attack, they had about a minute to get it all the way to the end. DeToNator have so much more time.
Oh, nicely placed self-destruct coming in from Yoshiharu, finds Mollis there, perfect trajectory, and now where are the rest of these SunSister players? They're trying to obviously get a bit of contest going on, but I feel like it's a little bit too late there. They really needed to find something with that first self-destruct coming through, and as you can see, the rest of the team just absolutely destroyed. Now Anakin still being so aggressive here. SunSister trying to change things up a touch. Mollis actually hitting onto this Genji, so let's see if his is going to do a little bit more work than XQQ.
No Tracer at all, but Mollis, he's going to have to try and aim up in the sky because as we've been seeing, Anakin has been a rather big threat. We've kept the camera on him for a long time for a very good reason, playing sneaky. He does have that barrage. Key thing to watch out for, it's always going to be that defense matrix. Reinhardt barrier, not a huge deal. You can just blow right through that.
And Anakin remaining in this decent position here, but now the payload's gone past the barrage. Not any time wasted here coming through from Anakin. Picks himself up one. A lot of damage being sent out to the side of SunSister as well. So Harte just throws out the pulse bomb, finds himself a mech. This Discord orb, XQQ, does pick that kill up onto Anakin, so now does have the position. But instantly, pressure put right back onto him here. So XQQ doesn't even get any time to sit up there and do decent amounts of damage. He's already sent back to the spawn, and that's going to be that. No, it's not. They do keep this one going here. Unbelievable right now. XQQ looking like he was going to make a change, but will come back for the tactical visor. Self-destruct coming through, the Transcendence from DeToNator as well. Looking to get this one finished with a bang, but now XQQ will not be able to find enough with that tactical visor. The rest of the team falling over here, and this is surely going to be DeToNator picking themselves up a win, but the trickle coming through from SunSister, keeping things alive. A slight trade kill coming through from Mollis, but it's not enough as DeToNator are going to pick themselves up Eichenwalde.
I was thinking that was going to be a lot more of a tough fight there. After SunSister got it all the way to the end, after a tough slog, getting it just before the end of the third checkpoint. But DeToNator, they just demolished SunSister on the attack. And a lot of that was from the first point, how fast they capped it. They weren't really held up at all on the second checkpoint either. And well, by then the snowball was rolling. And Anakin as well, finding even just one kill with that barrage was enough.
I mean, after the barrage as well, yeah, you saw the rest of SunSister just get forced back completely there. A lot of cooldowns had to be used as well to really sustain the team through it there. And Saihate as well. He was such a strong player throughout that entire Eichenwalde.
Just like I said, Saihate's really picked up on the Soldier. I don't have, unfortunately, a lot of the things he's great on Soldier aren't really transferring onto the Tracer. He's great in the sense that, like, the guy is kind of like a turret. He's got great aim, good tracking, kind of transfers that onto Tracer, but that's where it kind of falls short. So when you have Saihate on the Soldier, I think what really works well for DeToNator right now is Saihate there, and then Anakin sort of supporting on whatever other role, be that the Tracer himself, or a Genji, or just about anything else. Even if DeToNator want to run the triple tank, it's really effective, which, by the way, segues into the fact that SunSister, I like the adaptations they made, because on their attack, as soon as they capped point number 2, made the change up, went on to Reinhardt, put XQQ onto the Roadhog. Now, this is the kind of change of hero that I like to see from XQQ. You can see that it is something that is
premeditated.
A set plan, like this is a set prepared thing that they're doing, and it's not like a change that he's doing on the whim.
And the biggest thing is as well, as you mentioned, it's obviously a plan of theirs, but you can see it's something that he wants to do. It's not something that the team is saying, hey, we want you to do this. You can see it's something that when he's picking it, how aggressive he's sort of playing, you can see the play style he's sort of bringing to that hero, is that you can see that he likes to be in that position there. I feel like the Mei sometimes is maybe something that the team are actually asking him to do, and it's not something that he wants to do because I feel like he wants to do more damage output, if that makes any sense. I feel like he feels he should be the core damage dealer.
It depends on the map, right? Like if you see him bring it out like at the start of the map, then yeah, sure, I'd say that's his team saying, like, look, this is the one where we're bringing out Mei, but sometimes it just comes out. Like I've said it a few times, just halfway through a round, and it just seems kind of, like Avril said, on a whim, right? It just doesn't seem like it's something planned, and it's something that XQQ is saying, hey guys, this will work, instead of SunSister saying, hey guys, this is what'll work.
It is his choice. It's based on interviews. It absolutely is.
Oh, it is his choice?
100% his choice. So, which is where the problem is, which is why it seems like a liability, because it's not a planned thing. It is on a whim. It is just a decision made on the fly that doesn't really work with this team. And SunSister often get into these weird positions where their team comp entirely changes, in the sense where half of them are then changed, molded into a different type of objective-based team composition, and the other half is still trying to play whatever they were before, and there's this massive level of disconnect, not just from himself, but forcing a couple of other changes out to sort of adapt to what he's doing, really, I think, negatively affects the entire team in general.
Well, speaking of disconnect there, you know, that sort of first point defense coming through from SunSister, you know, had XQQ in an amazing position, somehow managed to sort of get behind, you know, the entire side of DeToNator.GOLD there as they were walking their way through the right-hand flank. But it looked like the entire team weren't really committed into that piece of offense as they sort of tried to jump on them as they made their way through the choke. And then, you know, DeToNator just rolled through after that. Mollis was a little bit too late to the party, so I feel if they were either a little bit better at communicating that, if XQQ even waited just a touch longer before engaging into the back lines, that could have worked out really well for SunSister, really gave them a huge advantage to start off with. But
yeah, it's a planned thing where they needed to get the call because they needed to check that they were going to go, that DeToNator were going to push through that room, and XQQ needed to be the one to check that. So he checked that, and then you see the SunSister squad immediately move to try and collapse. They went for the collapse. I think XQQ he didn't execute well personally there. He didn't collect the kill into Dololoff, and he didn't get the kill into Saihate either. So he needed to be able to get both of those kills, and then that would have been a successful initial fight for them. So, you know, it's the kind of first opening play gambit where you go for an early play like that to catch the opponent off guard, you get the initial fight win, which then puts your ultimates up, and then you're sort of set as the defenders. You're in a really good spot for the rest of the defense. But it kind of went 50-50. They didn't get what they wanted, and DeToNator came on through pretty strong.
And the other thing I sort of wanted to mention there as well is you sort of talked about XQQ being on that soldier, and we sort of saw maybe a touch slightly stronger defense, you know, when they made that change when Mollis went over to Genji and XQQ played soldier on towards the end of point number 3 there. I feel if they played that from point number 1, or maybe kept, what was it called? If they let XQQ try his tracer out there and let Mollis be Genji, that might have worked out slightly better for them.
It's hard to say, of course, because they wanted to go for that sneaky ninja play. A little bit harder to do as soldier, of course. You can't dash through everyone all at once. One Helix rocket's not going to do the job. Well,
DeToNator.GOLD currently leading the series 2-0. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we return, it's going to be SunSister taking on DeToNator.GOLD, map number 3, and it will be SunSister's pick after the break. Welcome back to the Overwatch Pacific Championship. We're currently in SunSister taking on DeToNator.GOLD. I'm Dallas Easy Fight Today. Joining me here, Matt Smite Ross and Kevin Averill Walker. And very tight series here, but DeToNator.GOLD edging themselves ahead on Eichenwalde, picking themselves up the second map, leading the series 2-0. Now going to be SunSister's turn to pick yet again. They're going to need to pick themselves up a win here to obviously keep the series going. Who would have thought it in a best of 5? But I feel SunSister, you know, they can do it. They have shown a lot of strength there. It looks like they will have worked out some of these kinks here. Hopefully they get maybe XQQ off the Genji now, let him get onto that soldier and really start opening up the side of DeToNator.GOLD.
Yeah, I think the thing is, it's taking a few fights to find value out of XQQ quite often, because just as the nature of Genji, right, Dragon Blade can be a little bit unreliable. You do find yourself in very awkward situations. You can be slept, you can be just knocked away, and then of course you could just be ulting straight into a Transcendence or a Sound Barrier. And when you're on Soldier, those things come up a little bit less often. You still have to worry about things like Defense Matrix, which is probably the biggest thing that you need to worry about, but there's a very key time for when you need to do that. Just wait until D.Va's out of a mech, or just on the other side of the map.
Well, SunSister are going to be picking Temple of Anubis. So I feel, as I said, they need to get XQQ off the Genji. This is still obviously very, very strong for Genji in both offense and defense, so I do expect to see the Genji still being played nonetheless. Do you feel that there's room for them to pick up the soldier into this one?
I think he should play Genji for this because they need the snowball potential for the attack. They need to be able to leverage the momentum available from Genji, and look, they can decide to play. I think Genji Tracer would probably work quite well for their attack. Having said that, based on what I've seen on Temple Anubis for SunSister, they're likely to play Widow instead for XQQ because that's been the trend for them.
I like how they've adapted their Widowmaker play. At least in the match we saw against Fireball, right? They were almost dangling XQQ on a hook, right? Saying like, look, here's the Widowmaker. He's gonna kill you guys. What are you gonna do about it? And then of course, you know, their Winston, their Genji will jump straight on top of them. But that's when SunSister strike from the shadows. They come out with their own tanks coming back to peel for XQQ and kill the guys that are trying to kill XQQ. And suddenly there's a big numbers advantage for them, and they go in off of that. Now, it worked, against Fireball the first time, but Fireball learnt. Aputo got sneaky. Will DeToNator have learned?
Well, the big thing is we've seen obviously once XQQ gets going there on that Widowmaker, he is a force to be reckoned with. And I mean, once he gets going, it's very hard to stop him there. But as Avril mentioned as well about that snowball momentum, if he does get himself a little bit of an opening there, when they roll into point number 2, very hard for that Widowmaker to be successful. And we've seen DeToNator.GOLD, they do have a very strong defensive strategy, obviously, for Anubis.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into talking about it depending on which team is actually attacking first, but on the note of a Widowmaker on attack, it's not the biggest snowball. It's definitely not a Dragon Blade. Infrasight, it provides a lot of utility, that's for sure, but your Widowmaker has to be basically untouched to get value out of it, because yes, Infrasight does actually bring a potential damage boost to Widowmaker in the form of it's much easier to hit those shots against peeking targets if they're not playing correctly and actually coming out from behind cover. But it also forces the enemy team to play undercover, to know that anytime they poke their head out, there's the threat of them just being one shot and taken out of the fight. So I'm not saying it's anywhere near the level of Dragon Blade, but it can be an asset moving into the second point.
And one thing that Avril, I believe, mentioned yesterday as well, XQQ playing the Sombra, whether it be on that sort of defense there, you don't want essentially your best player, your best hit scan player playing that Sombra, because obviously it's not as consistent damage as other heroes that he can bring to the table. So I'd like to see them probably make that change. That would probably be something I would expect to see them do coming into this against DeToNator.
It's a pretty big ask to see if they've actually changed it by now, but then again, they may be seeing the result of teams that have been swapping their healers on, seeing much more success with that style. It may happen, but something else I want to talk about is this player right here, playing Widowmaker on defense. Now, this is not unprecedented. Blank have actually done this before. The Mercy and the Widowmaker, you damage boost Widowmaker, and it makes it a whole lot easier to get those body shots to actually count. Players like Tracer will actually die in one shot as well, and it is XQQ as well, so the biggest damage threat is now on Widowmaker right now, a very big target. Is it still going to be that bit of a bait on the hook, though?
As well, so I mean, he's going to have to hit these shots if they want to hold this defense down. Great repositioning now coming through from XQQ. Going to be playing in that, obviously, attacker's role. They're just letting DeToNator get up onto that high ground and set themselves up that position. And look, as they try to scan for this defense from SunSister, they've already repositioned themselves in quite a nice way here. But XQQ, you need to hit these shots, obviously, if you want to come up big.
Yeah, of course, it's also going to be on Anakin to find him, but only if he's really becoming a threat. He's not keeping his members alive because he's a Widowmaker and not getting the kills to match it instead. This is actually just DeToNator steamrolling through. Yeah,
a little bit too passive play coming through from SunSister. I like the repositioning there, but again, it's a very hit or miss sort of piece of defense there. XQQ needs to find himself a pick. He's got an Infrasight, but it's not going to be enough. You see him there just standing there waiting to be sent back to the spawn, and now DeToNator with an extremely quick cap going to be rolling their way on through to cap number 2.
It's also a bit of a case of the pharmacy problem where your Mercy is just healing Farah for 90% of the time, and you can see in that case there just damage boosting XQQ for 90% of the time. Now he is still going to swap over onto that Sombra as well. Doesn't really have time to set up the health pack hacks, let alone get towards EMP. This is DeToNator's biggest moment to strike. Anakin coming up to that Dragon Blade, and it's a 6v5.
Already a great start there for DeToNator as they work their way into point number 2. They need to catch this sneaky Mollis. Indeed they do. While the dash is on cooldown now, the nano boost onto Anakin with the Dragon Blade. What can he find with this? They're already in that player advantage. They're going to take XQQ down with it. So again, the Sombra doesn't really get set up into this piece of defense. Now DeToNator all over the point. There is a bit of contest now coming through from SunSister with that self-destruct, but does it buy them enough time for the rest of these players to get back into the fight?
They have already picked up 2 kills already on the defense, which is almost enough for them to come back in. EMP is also coming up for XQQ. He just needs to hit a few more shots. SunSister should hold.
Wow, if Elu managed to find those shots there, that would have been Mollis being sent back as well, not being able to have that threat of the Dragon Blade looming overhead. But indeed, they do get themselves a stabilization off the back of this one now, and we'll be able to set this defense up now. XQQ, we've seen him do this in prior games, going to be probing at DeToNator as they try to push and setting up for that EMP.
That's the biggest thing. It especially sets him apart from DeToNator as well. When XQQ is on the Sombra, he goes very far forward, tries to find damage to charge his ultimate, and also teleports back. But here his job is EMP.
There it is. It lands on the entire squad of DeToNator, but DeToNator doing a great job at actually just retreating out of the back of this, and the fight a little bit too long to work out in SunSister's favor. And DeToNator DeToNator already picking that kill up onto XQQ. Odin-kun losing his mech now as well. Anakin getting very close to get another Dragon Blade. So DeToNator turned this early aggression into their favor there. Molos's Dragon Blade only finding one mate, that two there onto Saihate. So that's a little bit of a saving grace now for the side of SunSister. The rest of these players will be able to get back into the fight and contest, but the cap is moving extremely quickly, and Anakin with a nicely timed Dragon Blade there, looking to clean up these few players as they try to get back in and contest the point. They need to find at least one here, but it's still going to be coming up in the way of DeToNator.GOLD. The sound barrier now for SunSister to get themselves back on this point, but Saihate with the tactical visor, but the boost is on him as well. He just needs to left click. He can get a lot of work done here with this tactical visor. Did they manage to find themselves up enough kills? It doesn't look like it. They're just a millimeter here away from capping this one over on point number 2. XQQ trying to keep things alive with Odin-kun by his side. Night Owl making that switch as well, changing up to Tracer, getting himself back into the fight here. They are going to be taken out into this next fight. They're trickling back onto the point. They need to find anything at all, but DeToNator just moments away from capping out point number 2. But do they have enough gas left in the tank to push them over the edge here? That's the real question. They're finding kills left, right, and center, but still these players from SunSister getting themselves back out and back onto the point.
There's no way for them to win from here. It's just DeToNator losing time on capturing this point here. No one's going to die for them. SunSister have 0 sustain. Elu's the only one, and that's just a Lucio as well. Everyone going on is just relying on their mobility to dodge attacks, try and stay on the point for just a few seconds longer. Like Tracers, Winstons, even Divas coming out, and not a single person on DeToNator died in the last minute there, all stacked on the point.
Yeah, once they sort of got entrenched there on that second cap, was very, very hard for SunSister to push them off, and that's when you might want to see XQQ bringing out the Mei.
I think, yeah, okay, that's a situation where Mei is probably okay, but also EMP is a bit of a very low % chance, but a win condition nonetheless to try and catch people out while they're hacked. But in any case, speaking of that EMP, the one big team fight that they did go for, where SunSister threw out EMP, tried to win a team fight, it was far away from the point, and the biggest part was Molos with his Dragon Blade was not quite in position, and then when he got there, a little bit hesitant to go in anyway. He was sitting there off to the sidelines. He could have gone in. There wasn't much to stop him, but it looked like they just realized, okay, look, DeToNator, they weren't hit too hard by this EMP. They've backed off accordingly, but then one person got caught out. I believe that was XQQ as well, and they just steamrolled in with that numbers advantage right then and there.
And I mean, when SunSister obviously managed to get that you know, a little bit of breathing room after winning that first defense on cap number 2, when they really took that EMP fight, that's what really let them down. They didn't really capitalize off the back of that EMP, I feel. And after that, you know, DeToNator were in such a good position to obviously make SunSister pay for that, obviously, and then work their way in and just continue to gain those picks. And the other thing as well, they had so much ultimate charge back and forth. Anakin getting 2 Dragon Blades back to back very quickly.
Well, that's the big thing, right? Like when you don't have another DPS player and instead it's a Sombra, Anakin is suddenly a whole lot safer, right? He can actually just jump around. Your supports are a whole lot safer. Everyone in general is just going to live a whole lot longer. And that big reason is that Anakin got 2 ultimates during that fight was because he could stay alive for that long during the fight. And as well, you know, DeToNator also having a big numbers advantage, making it very hard to take down even one member. But DeToNator just really sealed the deal there.
Well, XQQ, pretty sure he's going to be back onto the Widowmaker. Definitely has a lot more success on their first point offense here. But going to be interesting to see what Molos obviously goes for in their offense. They're going to be bringing out the Genji. So I do like this now coming out from SunSister, but they're going to need to make haste because DeToNator made very good time on their offense.
Yeah, but the XQQ strategy does take a little while to set up. We'll see if they try and dangle the bait there for DeToNator to jump on, but I don't think they're going to buy it at all. They're just going to wait, try and see what's going on. No one seems to be too close to XQQ, but, well, he falls off, so still not much of a threat. But he needs to find these picks pretty soon. Does find a few body shots, but that's not enough.
Oh, almost managing to find Saihate there. Good start there for XQQ, but DeToNator in a very strong position here. Now XQQ looking to gain himself some high ground position. Can't really get it. Oh, but what a nice headshot there onto Saihate, starting things off very good now for the side of SunSister, but they need to capitalize off this player advantage as fast as possible here. Now looking to get control of that high ground, but he's getting pressured now instantly by Anakin. But we've seen him do this before, winning these one-on-one duels with other DPS characters when he is playing that Widowmaker. Nice shots being landed there. Samurai D going to be taken out early into this, but you've got to remember, no snowball potential once they get this first cap.
Well, it's not zero snowball, but there is a lot less than if they had a Genji, right? This guy is just buying so much time for his team, but really, is it going to matter? By this point, Saihate will be returning to the point, but of course his team's recognized point A is definitely gone right now. You're just buying a little bit of time, but maybe
Not
perhaps
definitely,
actually, no, they haven't
as these
recognized
DeToNator
that.
players with a great bit of repositioning now. The tactical visor coming through onto Saihate.
Just a nano boost, no
doesn't
tactical
even
visor.
need the, oh sorry, I said tactical visor. I just meant to say the nano boost coming through there. Gets a lot of damage done through. Will be getting very close to his tactical visor any second now. Bullying now these SunSister players as they just thought they had this cap. They got a little bit too complacent, and now DeToNator. Very good position here to set themselves back up and hold it at point number 1. 2 minutes left on the clock.
Complacent is the key word there because they got a kill onto Saihate. That's the moment they should have gone straight onto the point and baited DeToNator down to them because there's no high ground advantage if Soldier isn't up there. It doesn't really matter. But now they're swapping Execute onto the Soldier himself, which is really what they need at this moment. It's going to set them back a little bit in terms of ultimates, but Widowmaker didn't really matter anyway. Mollis needs to get value out of his Dragon Blade, but it's going to be just matched by what DeToNator can bring out.
But what can DeToNator bring out? That's 5 ultimates right there, so I'd say they've got a lot. The tactical visor this time now coming through from Saihate, just getting bounced back there by the likes of Zetman, who hits his primal rage there. But it looks like Anakin's Dragon Blade's doing work, and he goes to town up in the back lines of SunSister, finding himself XQQ and Night Owl on top of this. So SunSister being pushed back yet again. 1 minute 15 now left on the clock. And things are starting to look grim for SunSister.
Both DPS ultimates are now down for DeToNator, so SunSister could go in one more time. They're not going to get XQQ's tactical visor during this fight, but Mollis will have Dragon Blade. No nano boost to go with it. They may be able to save up for a sound barrier to keep him alive during it. I think that's going to be the biggest thing for them to do, because really, he just needs to find the key targets right now. If he can find Saihate, if he can find the healers as well, then that should be a one fight for SunSister.
And there comes the self-destruct now coming through. There is the Dragon Blade now from Mollis, but it's right into that sound barrier from the side of DeToNator. He does pick up 1, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough as DeToNator already giving themselves that 3-man advantage. Now it's going to be equalized here from SunSister. Mollis looking to take out this demon before the mech comes back through. Yoshiharu with a huge kill out of Mech Diva, picking it up. And now DeToNator should surely be able to hold on to this one, the Primal Rage on top as well. Just going to be forced out there by XQQ. But it's not even going to matter at this point now. 15 seconds left, 1 fight left to go. The self-destruct now finding nothing there from Odin-kun, and this is going to be the last fight indeed for SunSister as they're going to have to frantically push their way onto the point.
I've seen crazier last-second fights, but with Anakin coming up to Dragon Blade, Saihate coming up to Tactical Visor, you've really got to be praying for a miracle here for SunSister.
Well, Mollis doing good work to start things off there, getting himself an ultless kill. Make that a couple right now for SunSister. Anakin with the Dragon Blade, slashing it at thin air, getting nothing right now, and they get it out of nowhere. SunSister not needing any ultimates really to push them over the line here. And now the clock is back up to 4 minutes. SunSister now looking to roll on through to cap number 2.
They did use Dragon Blade during that, but DeToNator did hold on to the Tactical Visor. That's going to be the key thing, but it's also putting a huge amount of responsibility onto Adenkin. If he can block that entire ultimate out, then SunSister have enough to roll on through. There's no sound barrier for DeToNator, so Mollis, if he can find a good pulse bomb, can start off this fight perfectly.
Well, they need to get it quick because they're already behind DeToNator's double cap time here. They need to get in and come up big with that pulse bomb. Can it find anything? Not at all, as DeToNator now taking SunSister out. They do manage to use essentially nothing into that fight as well, so DeToNator just cleaning it up and wiping SunSister on that piece of offense, but they are going to be changing up. Zetman going to be bringing out the Reinhardt.
And of course, they're going to be happy to charge up that EMP as well for Dodolov, keeping him just afloat, because remember, Dodolov is a lot more conservative on his Sombra play compared to XQQ. Doesn't go off into the enemy team to dive, take damage, come back and charge up his ult with that health pack. And even try and get a few kills like XQQ sometimes does. But speaking of XQQ and the rest of his team, they have swapped up to a big brawling composition, throwing in the Roadhog here as well. It's going to be Mollis this time and XQQ on the McCree. I've seen this player do wonders with this hero, incredibly accurate, gets a ton of headshots in a row, but needs to do it right now.
Well, a few defensive ultimates, just a little bit too late there from SunSister, hitting that Transcendence ever so slow, and XQQ falls. They need to fall back out of this fight and try to bait the full commitment out from DeToNator. They're going to be using the EMP and the Primal Rage into this fight. So surely something that SunSister cannot win here. Saihate holding onto this tactical visor. He's getting pressured out very well now from Mollis, but will just win that duel there against him as Dodolov comes in to save the day.
Bit of an interesting choice to stick around as well, because of course it's still a hard place to retreat out of, but they're essentially staying there. 3 members against a team that may be equal for now, but the respawns are right there behind them. So massive advantage there, just gained for DeToNator. Both DPS ultimates up once more. That was a bit of an economical push for SunSister, of course, because they are looking to, they already changed up their composition. And speaking of that, they did it once more. So I don't think they have time for this. Like you said, they were already behind DeToNator's time. Now they're going for a Zarya composition. And Mollis is back onto the Genji. Yeah, that can win when you get a big combo with the Grav and the Dragon Blade, but they've got to go for a few fights to do that. They've only got a minute and a half.
And the thing to remember is this is their pick as well, so you'd assume that they would have their strategies down pat and something prepared coming into this. But let's hope the Zarya is the change that they were looking for. XQQ up in the backlines takes Saihate. Great start there, but Anakin's Dragon Blade doing a decent amount of damage, but doesn't really find enough with it there. So SunSister slowly edging themselves ahead, but DeToNator still so much left in the bank. That Deadeye for XQQ is not going to do anything there, as Yoshiharu's going to deal with him. The EMP now coming through with the tactical visor by his side from Saihate, wiping out the rest of these SunSister players. Under 1 minute now left on the clock, and their backs against the wall. SunSister going to be able to need to find something.
Well, if I talked about an economical push, that's probably the best thing SunSister's going to get from that, not using a lot of ultimates of their own. In fact, Zero and DeToNator, they used the tactical visor, the Dragon Blade, and the EMP as well. This is now SunSister's moment to go. And no Grav, no Dragon Blade, but they might come up in the fight. The big ones are going to be the Earth Shatter and then the Deadeye. And when you're relying on Deadeye, it's such a risky play to go for. But with Sound Barrier, they may just be able to pull it off.
Well, as you've mentioned, Smite XQQ's done wonders with his McCree before, and he does stick with the team this time, so can throw the Deadeye out from behind the shield, looking to find one. The Reflect now coming through from Anakin. Oh, he gets absolutely nothing there with that Deadeye, so that's going to be disaster. Earthshatter being now thrown out from Zetman, but is there any damage to follow up from the back of it? DeToNator doing a great job at spacing themselves right now and playing very defensively. Anakin finding that kill onto Elu, gets a nice reset onto Night Owl as well. Almost getting his own Dragon Blade up. The EMP coming through, being the icing on the cake here for the side of DeToNator. Mollis' Dragon Blade not really finding enough, and DeToNator going to be picking the series up 3-0.
Wow, it's a devastating defeat for SunSister right now. This was their match to finally pick up a win, and it was on their home day as well. The most important day for them, their best advantage, and they go down 0-3. It just shows that right now, DeToNator are the team that have improved a whole lot more than SunSister right now. Just, even though the maps were fairly tight and quite even, DeToNator were just showing that consistently over 3 maps, they were the better team.
Yeah, most definitely. Very calm under the pressure that when SunSister did apply it to them, didn't really buckle under that as well. And I mean, the results really speak for themselves. You know, in the earlier weeks, both of these teams, you know, went the closely matched, and now it just looks like DeToNator are even in a class of their own there.
DeToNator have gone, they've been moving forward so well. I mean, even, I kind of still use the Fireball example here to sort of describe where DeToNator is. Unfortunately, it wasn't 0-3, but I think Fireball have made significant improvements as well. So have DeToNator. Just happens SunSister, unfortunately, they're the ones falling behind, and I think Eichenwalde was probably the closest map here. I don't think Temple of Anubis was really that close at the end of the day, unfortunately. You just look at the way they attacked, they barely got themselves the cap on the first point. So It was a big struggle. It was a real struggle. XQQ on the Widowmaker, I don't know, he got the initial pick onto Saihate. Maybe Saihate should have, he absolutely shouldn't have picked that, but I mean, the fact that SunSister couldn't really take advantage of that to secure the full cap, DeToNator still had so much pushback. And even when we look at SunSister's defense, I mean, I still think, you know, XQQ on the Sombra is a maybe, but at the same time, what they have done that's quite respectable is because they put Night Owl onto the Tracer, they sort of alleviate the damage loss from having XQQ onto the Sombra, so they kind of just swap themselves around there. So that it's kind of okay, but there was no good EMP out of XQQ, unfortunately. None of the EMPs he hit were realistically that impactful. When you look at it from the other side, DeToNator, every single EMP, or nearly every single EMP, was a fight win.
I mean, there was that EMP that he did hit, I think, and it did connect with, I think, maybe 5 out of the 6 players, but they were already they were just so easily able to sort of just fall back instantly.
They were basically at the entrance to their path of attack, right? And they say, oh, well, okay.
We're not going to fight you.
We'll just back off. And it was also, like I said before, a bit of the hesitation coming out from maybe the team as a whole, but also Mollis, who was on the sidelines. He did arrive a little bit late, but still could have got in there with the Dragon Blade. But at that point, you've got to say, that's just a little bit too risky going in because they're already in a better position than they were before. By the time you've arrived there, half of the EMP is already run out. You don't have that much time to use the Dragon Blade to the best effect, and even then, it's still a big risk because XQQ already died at the start of the fight.
Maybe Mollis needs to get a new watch. He seemed to be late a couple of times to a few fights there this evening. Even though he did have, again, quite a few shining moments there, I feel like if he was a little bit more in sync with the rest of the team, they definitely would have had a lot more of closer matchups, I feel.
You see the combo presented by DeToNator as well. This is a big difference because maybe it's better for SunSister to actually run Mollis onto the Sombra. Then that way you can keep XQQ on the Soldier, because when you have the Soldier, the big combo is EMP Tag Visor. Wow, now you don't have any shields, you don't have any Matrix, you're entirely susceptible to 100% of the damage out from Tag Visor. And you see DeToNator pulling that off time and time again. It was just a really, really strong standard opportunity from them to really close out a win. And just a devastating, unfortunate performance from SunSister again.
And I guess one of the final sort of points to make about that as well, the frantic sort of changes there on SunSister's offensive side there, changing their composition twice. Obviously, they did have a Widowmaker, you're obviously going to change that one up. But changing, into the Hog combo with the McCree and then switching that up yet again with the Zarya, changing Mollis off the Hog as well. It just is very sort of surprising that, on your own map pick, you don't really have a preset sort of strategy that is forcing, DeToNator.GOLD to play into you. You're almost forced to play DeToNator.GOLD's game, and that I feel is...
Look, if they swapped to one of those compositions and then stuck with it, I'd be happy, right? The McCree and Roadhog makes sense. You want to go a bit of anti-dive, you want to try and find some picks, cool. You want to go to the Zarya and the Genji, try and go for a big team wipe with a Dragon Blade and a Graviton Surge combo, cool. That's another way to go into it.
Cool.
But swapping straight after choosing another one, just losing yourself not only a minute, but also your ultimate momentum, not the best idea.
Oh, DeToNator.GOLD now looking good there with 3 wins on the board, and SunSister in a class of their own, still sitting there down the bottom, 0 and 18. And I mean, we've sort of talked about these sort of the 3-tiering system of these teams. You've got your top 3, you've got your Marchi, HKA, but now Fireball have sort of stepped up into that sort of middle group there. And now you would put DeToNator.GOLD and SunSister in their tier of their own, but I feel that SunSister are in a tier of their own.
I mean, maybe. It's hard to say that DeToNator.GOLD have moved on to another tier because
they have.
They're
still getting 0-3 by Fireball. So
yeah, they're only beating SunSister. So
that's
just go for a little bit of bad.
That is all 3 of their wins so far. I think this really sets an unfortunate precedent, especially for SunSister, because if they're still 0-3 against DeToNator now, they have 1 round robin left to go. I don't know. It doesn't look like they'll be viable at all. It doesn't look like they'll even beat DeToNator in the next round robin.
And that is a very sad story there, but Amakin picking himself up the player of the game. I mean, generally, that sort of standout player from DeToNator.GOLD. I really feel that Yoshiharu obviously is still sort of one of those, the unspoken hero of the DeToNator.GOLD side. When things are sort of, their backs are up against the wall, he is the player that is very consistent at sort of contesting the point, keeping these fights going. But I mean, Amakin's Pharah, especially on Eichenwalde, was so very strong.
Look, as much as Yoshiharu can be the unspoken hero and does get a lot of value out of a lot of his matrixes, Amakin was very showy and also got a lot of value out of his Pharah,
He's
especially.
The spoken hero.
Yeah, exactly. We all talk about him, right? I mean,
Shout it to the rooftops.
Even in the matches, right, Amakin's name comes up a whole lot, and for good reason, right? And we just saw his Pharah play on Eichenwalde was probably the most standout, and let's not forget, that's without a Mercy as well. He was doing that all by himself.
Well, that's been the story since week 1. Amakin, this Pharah player, definitely not one of the best Pharah players that I've ever seen, but definitely a very strong Pharah player. And I mean, to obviously do that consistently week in, week out without that pharmacy combo is obviously speaks volumes about his own personal skill. And I mean, you mentioned as well in the cast there, the way he sort of knows the maps and is really strong on his sightlines. Beautiful stuff, I feel.
Sightlines, super important when you're playing Pharah just on your own without a Mercy to back up. You can't risk getting just 2-shot by a lot of heroes. And even when you're just being focus fired, right, you can just get shot down. We saw that happen to Amakin. As soon as he slipped up, he just got pounced on, right? He just got immediately taken down, and it felt like just a split-second thing, right? if you've got a Mercy healing you, then at least you've got a chance of, within that split second, that heal is going to keep you alive.
Well, DeToNator.GOLD picking up this first series against SunSister 3-0. After the break, we're going to be having SunSister taking on Flash Wolves, the big dogs themselves. After that, it's going to be Flash Wolves taking on Fireball. And to finish off the night there, Fireball taking on AHQ Esports. So this SunSister versus Flash Wolves game, obviously losing 3-0 to SunSister does not look very good for SunSister, but who knows? Maybe they were saving all the strats, all the big plays for this series.
SunSister losing 3-0 to themselves would be really interesting. I think you meant to say SunSister 0-3 to DeToNator.GOLD.
Sorry, did I say that?
Yeah, you said.
Oh my goodness.
That's all right, because somehow I don't think SunSister have been saving all the strategies for their Flash Wolves match, where
All the flashy plays.
I cannot think of a strategy for SunSister to win against Flash Wolves right now. I can think of what they'd need to do over a very long period of time to beat Flash Wolves, but between the match we just saw and the one coming up, it's really nothing short of a miracle for SunSister to even take a map, even take a stage on control off of Flash Wolves.
Well, SunSister are going to need to hit the hyperbolic time chamber and do leaps and bounds of improvements, as they are going to be taking on Flash Wolves when we come back after the break.